Eddie, one last question. Bob Arum, because you're a promoter, I want to know from you, recently said yesterday, the day before, that Terence Crawford needs to do more as far as promoting himself. Now, obviously, you saw the great win against Kell Brook, the knockout win, pound for pound, top dog in the world. How do you feel about Terrence's performance, and what would you do as a promoter if you were promoting Terence Crawford?
I mean, firstly, you've got to love Bob Arum, haven't you? I mean, is he the most brutally honest individual you have ever seen? How can you possibly say what he said in front of his fighter? I mean, he's basically said, I've spent so much money on this guy, I'm not sure if he's worth it. I could have bought a nice house instead. I mean, that is what he said. I mean, I thought it was so disrespectful to Terence Crawford, to be honest with you. I mean, you've got this guy here who is pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world. As far as I'm concerned, that relationship's over. You could see by that interview that relationship's over. I believe his contract's up in October or something like that. And I don't blame Bob, because he's too old to tell lies. Do you know what I mean? He just doesn't care. He doesn't care. So he's just like, I'm just going to tell you.
You're young enough to tell a couple lies.
Yeah, I'll tell a few. A couple of cheeky ones. But as Bob said when he was closer to my age, yesterday I was lying, today I'm telling the truth, right? So, but I just feel like, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because you can say, and I said the other day, about women boxing, I said, we have to raise the commercial value. And I think it's Heather Hardy come out and said, that's your job. You've got to raise the commercial value. And she's right to a sense, but, I don't think there's a lot that Terence Crawford can be doing. Does he need to do more media? Does he need to be more controversial? For me, you have to build on the foundations that you have when you're building a fighter. So let's look at Terence Crawford's foundations. He's an absolute superstar in Omaha, right? He's actually very funny, right? Very funny, very cheeky, and he has a very dry sense of humor. He's an unbelievable athlete. He's a very, very strong family man, and he's a very good role model. Mm-hmm. He's an absolute boxing expert, right? He knows about all fighters. He's probably a historian. He does everything. So I'm just telling you, as a Brit, and maybe as we're finding out, maybe it's a little bit different in the US. But for me, this guy actually has it all. It's not that, show me a weakness in Terence Crawford. Okay, well, he doesn't do as many media interviews as we'd like. Okay, that can be worked on. That's about personal relationship and trust to make sure your fighter listens to advice and does the right thing. But let's look at what we've got here. We've got a top 3 pound for pound fighter in the world. All the things that I said, we've got a guy with a great smile, who's funny, who's articulate, who's a family man, who's an ambassador, who's boxing through and through, who's American, and who is a world champion, So it's not even a glass half full situation. It's a glass 90% full. You just got to top the rest of the milk up, and then you've got the full cup. I love Terence Crawford. I think he's great. I just feel like he's lost a little bit of his mojo where, for me, the last thing you want as a fighter when you stand there in an interview on ESPN in front of millions of people is your promoter saying, well, he's not really worth it. That's the platform to stand up there and say, this guy is the best fighter I've ever worked with. I'm 90 years of age. I've been in the business for 70 years. This guy is like Leonard, like Hagler, like Robinson, whatever you want to say. Because that's what we have to do. We have to push it. You can't now. Everyone who watched that interview is going, "Oh, this guy's really like not much of a star, really, is he? Like he's finding it difficult to get fights because no one recognises him." Yeah. Bad move. Wow. You got to be championing your fight.
He did say that eventually in another interview he compares him to Hearns and
he does.
And
but you can't say I'm losing money on him and I don't think he's really worth it. I might buy a house instead. Right. Do you know what I mean?
All right. Does he beat Spence? Before you get out of here, Eddie, does he beat Spence?
Well, great question. I mean, listen. Firstly, on Kell Brook. Kell, although, is at the latter end of his career, came into that fight in great shape. Those first few rounds, he does what Kell Brook does. He just doesn't have the resistance that he once had, especially at 147 pounds. Crawford always starts slow, doesn't he? He did it against Brook, he did it against Kavaliauskas, and he does it continuously.
Not against Amir Khan.
Yeah.
Not against the Brits,
yeah, maybe. But even against
he
Brook,
dropped Amir Khan in the first round.
Yeah, but still, Amir came back into the fight a little bit in the second and third, but not majorly. But Kell Brook was arguably winning the fight after 3 rounds. Irrelevant, but he boxed nice. Mm-hmm. Real smart fighter. Breaks you down with your distance, switches all the time. He came out, didn't he? First of all, he came out orthodox, then he's switching southpaw. Effectively, the punch that did the damage was just a well-timed jab on Kell Brook. But, we just need to get to the stage, guys. I think if the pandemic and the way it will restructure sports and business can tell us everything, we have to make Spence against Crawford. I mean, how good is for boxing is that fight? Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of fight that I'm not saying. And by the way, it's not even that big to the casual audience. Do you know what I mean? Right. But to us and to the existing fan base and to the casuals beyond, it's mega. It can give us a shot in the arm. And ultimately, I've met Errol Spence a couple of times. I've met Terence Crawford enough times. I know, having just met them for the time period I've met them, they want to do this fight. Don't you agree? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I really don't believe.
Absolutely.
So why, we've got a responsibility, and it comes down, when people talk about Fury and AJ, it's when you have to realize what you are. We work for the fighters, right? We do what they say. We do what they want to do. If I said to AJ, I don't think you should fight Tyson Fury, he'd go, I don't care. I'm fighting Tyson Fury. So Terence Crawford's got to grab hold of this situation. Errol Spence has got to grab hold of this situation. And Al Heyman and Bob Arum have got to do what's right and make the fight. Now, maybe the terms, the fighters aren't over the moon with the terms. But you've got to get together and deliver this fight, because otherwise, Terence Crawford is in great danger, and Demetrius Andrade is in the same situation of actually never defining their legacy by having the kind of fights they could win or could have. And it's very difficult. Part of the problem with Crawford is, Bob can talk about his profile. It's because he's really good, right? Keith Thurman wants 10 million or whatever it was to fight Terence Crawford. We offered Charlo 5-6 million or whatever it was to fight Demetrius Andrade. They just look at these guys and go, no. And they use the excuse as well. That's why it's not good what Bob said. Oh, that guy's not a star. He's not big enough. What does he bring to the table? That's why you got to champion these guys. Same with Demetrius. Take him to Providence, prove to people that he's a star, get him to put in good performances, because if they don't take that opportunity, then we'll never know how good they were. Yeah, I want to see Crawford fight Spence. Pacquiao. I mean, even a Pacquiao fight don't really interest me that much. Right. Mikey Garcia, don't mind that fight. But I just feel that if we let Crawford against Spence get away from us, I just think it would be a big shame. That could be a once in a generation kind of fight. And
I
hopefully
agree
it gets made.
Well, listen, Eddie, man, hopefully you do win the bid with Canelo, and we want to see that Callum Smith fight, for his own sakes and Matchroom and us. So we appreciate you taking the time as always. Until the next Hearn Report, Eddie Hearn, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.